Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. I want to start with a follow-up from last week. I'm also probably going to end this podcast with a follow-up from last week because I will save the two truths and one lie to the end. So the first topic I want to cover is revisiting last week's discussion on the World Health Organization and their position on sweeteners that aren't sugar. Now, I'm intentionally pretty careful about the things that I say on this channel. I try and make sure that if it's an opinion of mine, if I don't have facts to back something up, I will state it as an opinion. I also tend to steer clear of any issues where there might be a strong connection to politics. And I was a little bit concerned that that might happen with the discussion on the World Health Organization. I also try to be mindful that as a content creator on YouTube, one of the things that they look at in terms of monetization or worse, demonetization, actually that's the more appropriate thing, that's what I'm concerned about, demonetization, is if they deem that something is misinformation, they can demonetize a video or potentially even a channel. And as a result, that's why a lot of channels 3 years ago wouldn't even say the word COVID, just because they didn't want to set off any of YouTube's flags. So I was a little bit concerned as I talked about the World Health Organization that I kept it very apolitical. And I was kind of expecting that some of you, my viewers, might come to the defense of the World Health Organization. Interestingly, not. I don't think I saw a single post that said, oh yeah, World Health Organization, they're wonderful, I love them. They're not motivated politically at all. So it's kind of cool that all of you were able to say in the comments the things that I felt I probably couldn't or shouldn't say in the video. But that was a pleasant surprise. Now there was one portion of that topic last week that I had thought about and intended to include but forgot, because sometimes I just get rambling and I forget. And that was on the whole correlation versus causation aspect of the study, and they're saying that consuming low-calorie or zero-calorie artificial sweeteners or non-sugar sweeteners or whatever they want to call it did not improve the likelihood that someone is going to lose weight. Now, not everyone who is consuming diet soda, for example, which is probably where most people are getting these non-sugar sweeteners, not all of these people are trying to lose weight. When it was probably around my junior or senior year in high school, I just got to the point that I found soda, regular soda, to be way too sugary for my palate. I used to drink Mountain Dew like crazy, and I just couldn't do it anymore. It was just too sweet. I didn't like the sensation on my teeth, so I switched to Diet Mountain Dew and Diet Coke, and continued to drink diet soda just forever then, until a handful of years ago, and then I pretty much quit drinking diet sodas, with the exception of Zevia, which I like a lot. But I was consuming these non-sugar sweeteners or artificial sweeteners not for the sake of losing weight. And in fact, and I know this from working in the food service in my youth, lots of times people will justify eating more because they're having a diet soda. I remember one instance when I worked at Happy Joe's Pizza and Ice Cream Parlor in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, as a young man. There were a couple of women that came in. It was just two women, and they were splitting a large deep dish pizza. And one of them said, well, are you sure we should get a large? And the other one said, I'm drinking Diet Coke, so it balances out. So I just wanted to point that out, that is one aspect of this study that, they don't talk to. The fact that people may be consuming artificial sweeteners or non-sugar sweeteners simply because they don't like the taste of a bunch of sugar. And continuing with the non-sugar sweeteners or artificial sweeteners discussion, I want to talk a little bit about sucralose. Now, sucralose seems to be a sweetener that a lot of people are divided on. I'm in the camp that likes sucralose. And what I have found is the people that are anti-sucralose, the people that leave comments for me that say, sucralose is poison, I don't know that all of them know why they feel that way. I think some people have just heard it's bad, and so they regurgitate that. They say it's bad, it's poison. Now, I think there may be some people that do themselves have physical issues with it. Perhaps it spikes their glucose, or gives them gastrointestinal issues. And for those people, by all means, you should not consume sucralose. But it's an individual thing. It's not bad for everybody just because it's bad for a given person. Now, other people are opposed to it because they think that those little yellow packets of Splenda are sucralose. They're actually 98%, maybe even 99% maltodextrin. And that's not necessarily a great thing if you're on keto. And the reason that manufacturers will add maltodextrin to things like Splenda sucralose or bouillon powder or something like that is because it makes it easier to measure. That whatever flavor they have, in this case sucralose, is so intensely concentrated that you need something to just buffer it or add to it, bulk it up, so that you can measure it more easily. I believe, and I would have to look this up, and I probably should have before mentioning this, the strength of sucralose is so powerful that it's like 1/16 of a teaspoon has the same sweetness as a cup of regular sugar. So very powerful stuff. Now, other people may be opposed to sucralose because of the study a few years ago where mice in a lab environment were given very high doses of sucralose, and they determined that it caused them some gut microbiome issues. Now, I've stated before on the podcast that anytime there are experiments done on mice, I take that with a massive grain of salt, whether it's proving something I believe in or want to believe in, or if it's trying to state something I don't believe in, something I disagree with. Now, at the risk of being really, really obvious here, mice are not humans. But let's just set that aside for a second and pretend that the reason mice are used in lab experiments is not because they're cheap and they've got really short life cycles and because you can do things to them that legally you can't do to a human. Let's say that that's not the case, that they're doing it because mice are in fact identical to humans. Physiologically, their bodies work the same as a human body. Now, interestingly, I did have a scientist contact me the last time I talked about this topic, and he said that the mice used in laboratories are actually not regular mice, like if you went to the pet store and bought some mice. These are mice bred specifically to be more reactive to any sort of a chemical or medicine or whatever you give them. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if this person is really a scientist, but again, we'll put that aside and we'll say that mice and humans, they work identically. At that point, then, you need to take a look at the dosage that these mice are given on a daily basis over a period of time to elicit these health problems. Now, I had extrapolated based on my weight how much I would need to eat, how much sucralose would I need to consume every single day to equal what was given to these mice to upset their gut microbiome. And the answer was, I believe, 42 packets of Splenda, the equivalent sucralose of 42 packets. Now, I'm also a fan of keto chow, and that uses sucralose. And the amount of sucralose in a given packet, a given serving of keto chow is 0.06 grams. So for me to consume the same amount that these mice were given, I would need to consume 80 servings of keto chow per day. Interestingly, in this past week, another study came out talking about how a certain component of sucralose, so you break down sucralose even further, and there's a subcomponent of sucralose that can cause actual changes to DNA, at least within mice. And there's a great article. I had this conversation with Chris Baer of Keto Chow, and he wound up actually creating an article. I'll link to it down in the description below. And he calculated the amount of sucralose a human would need to consume in order to get this subcomponent that actually causes the DNA damage within mice. And the concentration would need to be almost 530 times what is in a packet of keto chow. Now, there are some people that might say, hey, listen, if it's poison, it's poison. It's poison in a little dose, it's poison in a big dose. Why would you want to put it in your body? And to that, I would go back to the quote, people often say the dose makes the poison. The original quote by Paracelsus was, all things are poison and there is nothing without poison. It is the dose that makes it a poison or not a poison. Although it's a lot easier just to say the dose makes the poison. So let's say that we'll take something completely benign, like water. And I think they recommend you drink 8-ounce glasses of water a day, so 2 quarts. So if that's the recommended daily dosage of that, and we want to concentrate it the same way this recent sucralose experiment did, I believe that means I would need to drink on the order of 260 gallons of water a day. And I think 260 gallons of water would probably do some harm to me. So just because consuming it in that extreme amount is bad, does that mean consuming it in a small amount is bad? And I come back to the point that I always make, which is what you eat, what you put in your body is an individual decision. And I respect that. Whatever you want to eat or don't want to eat, that is your call. That's not my call. Similarly, what I eat is not your call. We each need to figure out what affects us. We each need to do our own research and make our own decisions. So that's all I have to say about that. Wouldn't it be interesting if this ad break is brought to you by Sucralose? Last week, I did a video type that I had kind of sworn that I would never do, which is a what I eat in a week video. And just like the discussion on the World Health Organization, I expected there to be, I don't know, some sort of pushback or I don't like this or you shouldn't eat that or something like that. And I didn't get that. The response was just wonderfully, wonderfully positive, and I did get a couple of good suggestions for how I could further improve these videos. So I'll likely be doing more of those. Now, I'm not sure how far I'm going to take this. I got a lot of requests. You know, you give people a little and they want more. I had people saying, well, show us what you eat for snacks. Show us how you make your coffee. I think those are reasonable. But then I started getting requests on, I'd like to see just what your whole day looks like. What does your workout look like? What do you take for supplements? Things like that. And I'm reluctant to do those. Who knows? I was reluctant to do this what I eat in a week thing. But I think that starts getting, well, for one thing, I'm a fairly private person. There's a limit to how much I want to share out in the public domain like this. But when it comes to things like exercise, how you work out, your supplementation, your pre and post workout and things like that, people get pretty religious about that. They get really dogmatic and, oh, you shouldn't do that. Oh, you should never do free weights. You're going to injure yourself. Oh, no, you shouldn't use resistance bands. You need to move some iron around. Or, oh, I don't know why you take that. You don't need that. You get enough of that just by going out in the sunlight or something like that. So it'll depend on how much of a mood I'm in to deal with all of that feedback. But definitely the what I eat in a week video, I'm not probably going to do them weekly, but maybe twice a month. Once a month, something like that, just based on the feedback that I've gotten so far. Also, in that video, a number of people asked me what I think of the RecTech pellet grill and will I be doing a review. Yes, I will absolutely be doing a review. I've started recording a bunch of stuff. I recorded when it was delivered just to include that in the video for fun. But the short version is I'm still very much in the honeymoon period with it. I love the thing. And I don't want to do a review until I feel that the honeymoon is over. Unless I hit a point where it doesn't end. I'm just so in love with it that I'm willing to put a stake in the ground or a stake on the grill and say, I love the RecTech. But so far, I love that RecTech. So the final and probably fairly long topic of this podcast will be the 2 truths and a lie reveal. So last week, I announced a little game. It's a game that I do when I'm facilitating meetings at a company that are extended meetings where people really got to get to know one another. It's a little game called 2 truths and a lie. You tell 2 things that are true and hopefully interesting about yourself, and then 1, hopefully plausible lie. And then people try and guess which are the truths, which are the lies, and it promotes conversation generally throughout the week for the people in these extended meetings. Now, I don't know if I want to keep calling it 2 truths and a lie because everybody kept coming back and saying, well, this is a lie, and it made me feel like a liar. Maybe I'll call it 2 truths and an untruth if people wind up liking this game. So the 3 statements that I made last week are, I was a professional kickboxer, I used to eat onions like apples, and that I used to have a cat who would make prank phone calls in the middle of the night. The lie was onions. I did not like onions as a child. And growing up in the 70s in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, this was before we had a Burger King. So when you'd go to McDonald's, you didn't get to have it your way. You got it the way all 30 of those burgers were just made before they went under the heat lamp, which was with onions. So when I'd get my burger, I would have to take like a ketchup packet and scrape the onions off of it. I can't believe that there was a time in my life where I didn't love onions, because boy, do I love onions. So that brings me to the story behind the two truths. The first one I'll talk about is the cat. I had a cat by the name of Floyd, named after Pink Floyd. And I also had a phone. This is back in the days of landlines. This would have been early 90s. And it was a pretty cool phone. It had 12 auto dial buttons, or speed dial buttons, and it had a speakerphone on it. And if you pressed any of the speed dial buttons without picking up the handset, it automatically went to speakerphone. So you'd press a button and it would go, that's my imitation of a phone dialing. And my cat Floyd would set it off. And at first I thought maybe it's just because it's setting on this counter and he likes to walk across the counter, and he was just walking and he just stepped on it by accident. So I moved the phone, and no matter where I moved it within my apartment, he would still set it off. So eventually I set it on a stereo speaker, and it was right next to my computer desk. It was kind of hard to get to. You would have to make a deliberate effort as a cat to get to it, and he would. And the thing is, Floyd would do this not during daytime hours, but in the middle of the night. So I would be lying in bed and I would be awakened to the sound of and then some friend of mine being woken up and sounding very tired and irritated that they had just gotten a call at 3 a.m, and I'd rush out into the living room and hit the hang up button. I got to the point where I had the phone on a stereo speaker, hard to get to. I put a box over it, and then I put the Milwaukee white pages and yellow pages on top of it to keep it weighted down. And this is going to sound totally like a lie, but this is the God's honest truth. I would lie in bed and I would hear thump. That was the white pages. Thump. That was the yellow pages getting knocked to the floor. Floop. That's the best imitation I can do of the sound of a box being flipped off a phone, flipped off. So knocked off the phone, and then I would hear the dial tone and the ringing. So this was clearly a case of a evil genius cat tormenting me and my friends in the middle of the night. That brings me to the one that people most thought was a lie. Professional kickboxer. When I was 37, I think, I had gone with a friend to the Milwaukee Rumble. It's a tough man competition. And, just guys getting up there, beating on each other, punching, kicking, things like that. And it's, everybody there, it's mostly guys, all drinking beer, a lot of testosterone flowing, and a lot of people, saying, oh, I could do that. I could get up in there and do better. And I said to my friend, you know what? I'm going to do this next year. I'm going to challenge myself to try and get in shape. I was over 200 pounds at the time. I wanted to fight light heavyweight, which meant getting down under 184. And I started working out. I wasn't making a lot of progress. Eventually, I joined a boxing gym locally, and I was one of probably, I think, the only two people that didn't speak Spanish. At least I didn't speak Spanish at the time. I still don't speak it all that well, but a little, un poquito. And I was also probably one of the two oldest guys there. Everybody else was like teen and early 20s, Mexican and Puerto Rican. And, so I kind of had to learn a little bit of Spanish just so as the coach would be yelling, punches to them, I would know what he was saying and what I was about to get hit with. But I trained. I was training every night. It was probably not all that fair to Terry that I was doing this, because I was going, I think, 3-4 nights a week to the boxing gym for 3 hours or more, while we still had, Connor and Courtney were both, practically toddlers at that time. And it was kind of cool because I could eat like crazy. I could eat anything. I could not eat enough to keep from losing weight because I was working out so hard. And then I went and I fought in the Milwaukee Rumble that year. And because I'm fighting for money, I have to give up my amateur status. I could no longer be an amateur boxer with USA Boxing. I had to join the Pan American Kickboxing Association. So for one fight, for one evening, I was a professional kickboxer. In terms of the fight itself, I did not win. It was a split decision. I lost on points, and I got hit in the face probably more than any human being has been hit in the face over a fairly short period of time, perhaps even their entire life. But I never took a step backwards the entire fight. I kept coming. It was weird because, there was a few thousand people there, and I think just the adrenaline was so strong, I could not feel myself getting punched. And at one point, I actually kind of laughed because I was amazed that I couldn't feel anything. And you don't want to laugh while getting punched because it knocked my mouthpiece almost into my throat. And then I had a couple of friends come back into the locker room, and they look at me and they're like, "Ooh, dude, your face." I'm like, "What? What's going on?" "Oh, dude, I'm pretty sure your nose is broken." And I'm like, "I don't think so, because I've had my nose broken multiple times, including boxing and sparring." But then I looked in the mirror, and my nose was just like over here, and I had a broken blood vessel in my eye, and my lips were pretty cut up as well. And that is my kickboxing/boxing story. It was a great workout. It's something that I really enjoyed. It was a little weird going into work all the time because I always looked like I was in Fight Club or something. I was always showing up at work with either a broken nose or a black eye or some sort of contusion on my face. It was a little bit awkward, when you're working at a big company like GE to look like you've always just been in a fight, because I kind of always was just in a fight. So if I can continue to keep this interesting, assuming this last one was interesting, I'll do it maybe on a monthly basis, every other month. We'll see. I mean, there's only so much I can tell you about myself before we run out, but we'll see what we can do. But that is going to be it for this podcast. As always, I really appreciate you spending a little bit of your time with me each day. I enjoy our dialogue down in the comments below. I think that's it, right? Yeah. Oh, other than thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.